My name is Ronald Thompson, 58 years old, a retired high school teacher from Boston. For most of my life, I've found joy in the simple things: my modest home, my garden, and most importantly, my daughter, Amanda. She was always my pride, my 32-year-old financial wizard. That Thursday evening, I was buttoning my favorite shirt, getting ready for our weekly dinner at her place when my phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer, Jack Henderson. "Call me immediately." My stomach dropped. Jack never contacted me after hours, unless something was seriously wrong. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button as I share how my entire world collapsed in a single phone call. Life changes in unexpected ways, forcing us to adapt to new realities we never imagined. My journey began 12 years ago when I lost my wife, Catherine, to breast cancer. The battle was long and painful, leaving Amanda and me to pick up the pieces of our shattered lives. Catherine had been the center of our small family, the one who remembered birthdays, organized holidays, and kept our household functioning with her incredible attention to detail. Her absence left a void that seemed impossible to fill. I remember standing in our kitchen the week after the funeral, staring blankly at the refrigerator, overwhelmed by the simple task of grocery shopping without her list. Amanda was 20 then, in her junior year of college, studying finance. Despite her own grief, she showed remarkable strength. She came home every weekend that first year, helping me adjust to life as a widower. We learned to lean on each other, creating a bond that went beyond the typical father-daughter relationship. From an early age, Amanda had been exceptional. She started reading before kindergarten, won the state spelling bee in 5th grade, and graduated as valedictorian from her high school. I still have her trophies displayed in my living room: swim team championships, debate club awards, and math competition medals. As a teacher myself, I understood the value of education, but Amanda's drive surpassed anything I could have instilled in her. She seemed destined for greatness. After completing her MBA with honors, Amanda landed a position at Blackwell Financial Partners, one of Boston's most prestigious financial firms. Within 3 years, she was promoted to senior financial advisor, managing portfolios for high-net-worth clients. I couldn't have been prouder watching her succeed in a male-dominated industry. When Amanda purchased her brownstone in Beacon Hill 4 years ago, she insisted we establish a weekly dinner tradition. Every Thursday evening, I would drive into the city, and we would share a meal, catching up on our lives. Sometimes she would cook, though she admitted to not inheriting her mother's culinary talents. Other times, we would order from her favorite Thai restaurant. Those evenings became the highlight of my week. About 8 months ago, I began noticing subtle changes in Amanda's behavior. Our conversations became more superficial. She would take phone calls during dinner, stepping into another room to speak in hushed tones. Twice she canceled our plans last minute, citing work emergencies. When I asked if everything was all right, she assured me she was just busy with important clients. "You know how it is, Dad," she would say. "When you're managing millions of dollars, people expect you to be available around the clock." I respected her privacy and professional obligations. Perhaps I was being overly sensitive, still afraid of losing the only immediate family I had left. Yet something felt off, like when you enter a room, and no objects have been moved, but can't identify exactly what's different. Then Thomas entered the picture. Amanda introduced him at one of our dinners about 6 months ago. Tall, impeccably dressed with perfect white teeth and a Harvard Business School pedigree. He worked in corporate acquisitions at a firm downtown and came from a wealthy Connecticut family with political connections. "Your daughter is exceptional, Mr. Thompson," he said, extending his hand. "You must be very proud." There was something in his tone that bothered me, as if he was surprised someone like me could have produced someone like Amanda. Nevertheless, I smiled and welcomed him, determined to support Amanda's happiness. Thomas never quite warmed to me, nor I to him. During the few dinners we shared, he dominated the conversation with stories about exotic vacations, expensive restaurants, and celebrity encounters. He rarely asked questions about my life or showed interest in my career as an educator. Amanda seemed different around him, laughing too loudly at his jokes and constantly seeking his approval. I voiced my concerns once, gently suggesting that Thomas seemed more interested in status than substance. Amanda bristled immediately. "You don't understand, Dad. Thomas has connections I could only dream of. He's helping me network with people who can take my career to the next level." I backed off, remembering my own father's disapproval of Catherine when we first dated. The last thing I wanted was to create distance between Amanda and myself. 3 months ago, Amanda called me on a Tuesday night, her voice bubbling with excitement. Thomas had proposed during a weekend trip to Napa Valley with a 5-carat diamond ring. They were planning a summer wedding at the Boston Harbor Hotel with over 300 guests. "It's going to be incredible, Dad," she gushed. "Thomas's parents are insisting on covering most of the expenses. They want to announce our engagement in the New York Times." The price tag she casually mentioned made my teacher's pension seem laughable. I wondered briefly how 2 young professionals could afford such extravagance, but assumed Thomas's family wealth explained it. I pushed aside my reservations and congratulated her warmly. In the following weeks, Amanda became consumed with wedding planning. Our Thursday dinners turned into wedding discussions with Amanda, showing me photos of venues, flowers, and gowns with price tags that made me wince. Thomas was rarely present, apparently too busy with work to participate in these details. "Are you sure this is what you want, sweetheart?" I asked one evening, as she showed me a centerpiece design that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Your mother and I had a simple ceremony in your grandparents' backyard, and it was the happiest day of our lives." Amanda gave me a look of mild pity. "This is different, Dad. Thomas has certain expectations. His family knows everyone who's anyone in Boston. This wedding is as much about networking as it is about celebration." I nodded, swallowing my concerns. If this lavish display made her happy, who was I to question it? Yet I couldn't silence the small voice inside me, wondering what had happened to my down-to-earth daughter, who once volunteered at homeless shelters and donated to educational charities. The weeks leading up to that fateful Thursday, I noticed Amanda becoming increasingly stressed. There were dark circles under her eyes, and she jumped whenever her phone rang. When I asked if work was pressuring her, she smiled tightly and said everything was fine. Just wedding jitters and big client accounts keeping her busy. I chose to believe her a decision I would soon regret more than anything in my life. The moment Jack's text message flashed on my phone screen, a sense of foreboding washed over me. In 30 years of knowing him, Jack had never contacted me after business hours. As my longtime friend and attorney, who handled my will and occasional legal questions, he respected the boundary between professional and personal time. I stood in my bedroom, one shoe on and one shoe off, staring at those 4 words. "Call me immediately." My hand trembled slightly as I dialed his number. Had something happened with my house title? Was there an issue with my retirement paperwork? My mind raced through possibilities, none of which prepared me for what was coming. "Jack Henderson speaking," he answered on the second ring, his voice unnaturally formal. "Jack, it's Ronald. I got your text. What's going on?" There was a pause, the kind that stretches like an eternity. I could hear him exhale slowly. "Ron, are you sitting down?" he asked. My legs suddenly felt weak, and I lowered myself onto the edge of my bed. "I am now. You're scaring me, Jack." I received a call from Detective Sarah Morgan with the Financial Crimes Division about an hour ago, he said, his lawyer voice in full effect. They're investigating a major fraud case at Blackwell Financial Partners. Ron Amanda is implicated. The room seemed to tilt sideways. What do you mean, implicated? There must be some mistake. I wish there was. Jack continued, his tone softening slightly. According to the detective, they have substantial evidence that Amanda has been diverting client funds into personal accounts for the past 3 years. We're talking millions of dollars, Ron. I laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. That's absurd. My Amanda. She wouldn't steal a paperclip, let alone millions of dollars. Someone's setting her up. The police have obtained a warrant for her arrest, Jack continued, as if I hadn't spoken. They're probably at her home right now. I wanted you to hear it from me before you showed up for dinner and found police cars outside her house. My mouth went dry. What kind of evidence? Bank records, falsified documents, client complaints. The detective didn't share everything, but she indicated it was substantial. Apparently, several elderly clients discovered their retirement accounts had been drained. They launched an internal audit, which led directly to Amanda. The room began to spin, and I gripped the edge of the bed to steady myself. A wave of nausea rose in my throat. Ron, are you still there? Jack's voice seemed to come from very far away. Yes, I managed to whisper. What? What happens now? She'll be taken into custody, processed, and arraigned tomorrow most likely. Bail will be set, but given the amount involved and the flight risk, it will be substantial if granted at all. Flight risk. This is Amanda we're talking about. She has deep roots in Boston. Jack's voice became gentle, the way people speak at funerals. Ron, I need to advise you not to contact Amanda right now. Don't call her. Don't go to her house. It could complicate matters for both of you. She's my daughter, Jack. I can't just sit here. I understand. But legally speaking, the best thing you can do is stay put. I've already reached out to Martin Goldstein. He's the best white-collar crime attorney in Massachusetts. He'll meet us at the station in the morning. I barely registered his words. My mind kept replaying memories of Amanda. Age 7, solemnly returning $1 to a cashier who had given her too much change. Age 12, spending her allowance to buy school supplies for a classmate whose family couldn't afford them. Age 16, volunteering every weekend at an animal shelter because she couldn't bear the thought of abandoned pets. This isn't possible, I insisted. There has to be an explanation. I hope there is, Jack said, but his tone conveyed he thought otherwise. Try to get some rest. I'll pick you up at 7 tomorrow, and we'll go to the station together. After hanging up, I sat motionless on my bed for what felt like hours, though the clock showed only minutes had passed. The room that had been so familiar now felt foreign, as if I'd woken up in someone else's life. My breathing came in shallow gasps as my mind struggled to process Jack's words. A memory surfaced. Amanda at 9 years old, coming to me with tears streaming down her face, confessing she had accidentally broken our neighbor's window with a baseball and had been too scared to admit it. I remembered the relief on her face when we walked over together so she could apologize and offer to pay for repairs from her savings. I had been so proud of her honesty that day. Where was that honest child in the woman Jack described? Had I missed something fundamental in raising her? Had Catherine's death warped something in Amanda's moral compass? The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 7 times, snapping me back to reality. Amanda would be expecting me at her house in 30 minutes. Despite Jack's warning, I couldn't sit in my house while my daughter faced this alone. I needed to see her, to hear her explanation, to look into her eyes, and find the truth. I finished putting on my shoes with shaking hands, grabbed my car keys, and headed for the door. Whatever was happening, Amanda needed me, and I would not fail her now. I ignored Jack's advice completely. Within minutes of ending our call, I was in my 10-year-old Toyota Camry hands, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I tried calling Amanda repeatedly as I drove, but each call went straight to voicemail. The familiar sound of her recorded voice, professional confident asking me to leave a message, now seemed like it belonged to a stranger. Boston traffic was typically congested that evening, each red light an eternity, as my mind raced through possibilities. Perhaps there was an innocent explanation. Maybe someone had gained access to her computer and framed her. Or a colleague had used her credentials to commit fraud. The alternatives felt increasingly desperate as I wound through the city streets toward Beacon Hill. As I turned onto Amanda's street, my heart sank. 3 police cars with flashing lights were parked outside her elegant brownstone. A small crowd of neighbors had gathered on the sidewalk, watching the scene unfold, with undisguised curiosity. I parked haphazardly a block away and hurried toward the commotion. Just as I approached, the front door opened. 2 officers emerged, flanking Amanda. Her hands were cuffed in front of her face pale and expressionless. She wore the same sleek gray suit she had likely worn to work that morning, but it looked rumpled now, her usual perfect appearance disturbed. Behind them came another officer, carrying a box of what appeared to be files and electronic devices. "Amanda," I called out, pushing past an officer who tried to keep me back. She looked up at the sound of my voice, and our eyes met. In that moment, I searched desperately for denial, for outrage, for the indignation of someone wrongfully accused. What I saw instead made my blood run cold. Shame, resignation, and something like relief, as if a burden had been lifted by finally being caught. It was the look of guilt, undeniable and raw. "Sir, please step back," an officer instructed, firmly placing a hand on my chest. "This is an active arrest." "I'm her father," I explained, my voice breaking. "Please, can I just speak with her for a moment?" "Not right now, sir. You can contact the station after processing." Amanda looked away as they guided her toward the waiting police car. "Dad," she called over her shoulder, "call Thomas. Tell him what's happened." Before I could respond, they had helped her into the back seat of the cruiser. Through the window, I could see her slump forward, her forehead resting against the partition that separated her from the officers in front. The car pulled away from the curb, red and blue lights pulsing silently now as it disappeared down the street. I stood frozen, aware of the neighbors' stares and whispers. A woman I recognized from Amanda's building approached, placing a tentative hand on my arm. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Susan from apartment 3B. I'm so sorry this is happening. Is there anything I can do?" I thanked her automatically, then returned to my car in a daze. Instead of driving home, I followed the route I knew the police would take to the precinct. The 20-minute drive passed in a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. By the time I arrived, Amanda had already been taken inside. The police station lobby was harshly lit and smelled of industrial cleaner. I approached the desk sergeant, a heavy-set man with tired eyes and a gray mustache. "My daughter Amanda Thompson was just brought in. I'd like to see her, please." He typed something into his computer. "She's being processed. You won't be able to see her until tomorrow after arraignment, unless you're her attorney." "No, I'm her father. When will the arraignment be?" "Most likely tomorrow afternoon, but it depends on the court docket." He seemed to take pity on me, his expression softening. "Look, this is a financial crimes case, not violent. She'll be treated well. You should go home and contact her lawyer." As I turned to leave, a woman in a tailored pantsuit approached. She was in her mid-40s with short dark hair and an air of quiet authority. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Detective Sarah Morgan, Financial Crimes Division. Jack Henderson mentioned you might show up here." "Is my daughter okay?" I asked, suddenly feeling every one of my 58 years. "She's fine, cooperating so far." She gestured to a row of plastic chairs. "Would you like to sit down? I can give you some information, though I can't discuss all the details of an ongoing investigation." I followed her to the seating area, lowering myself into a chair that creaked under my weight. There must be some mistake, I began. Amanda wouldn't do this. Detective Morgan's expression remained neutral, neither accusatory nor sympathetic. Mr. Thompson, I understand this is difficult to hear, but the evidence is substantial. We've been investigating Blackwell Financial for 3 months following client complaints. Your daughter's involvement became clear about 6 weeks ago. What exactly is she accused of doing? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Amanda diverted funds from client accounts primarily targeting elderly investors with substantial retirement savings. The money was transferred through a series of offshore accounts before eventually making its way to personal accounts controlled by her and her fiancé, Thomas Carmichael. Thomas is involved too. The floor seemed to shift beneath me. She nodded. We're bringing him in separately tonight. They appear to have been working together from the beginning. How much money are we talking about? I barely recognized my own voice. Our current estimate is approximately $4.3 million over 3 years, but the audit is ongoing. The amount could be higher. The figure was incomprehensible. I had spent 30 years teaching high school students never earning more than $65,000 in a single year. The amount Amanda allegedly stole was more than I would earn in multiple lifetimes. The victims, I managed to ask. Who are they? Something in Detective Morgan's expression changed, a flash of genuine sympathy. Primarily retirees, people who trusted Blackwell with their life savings. She hesitated. Mr. Thompson, I should tell you that several of the victims have last names that match former colleagues of yours at Brighton High School. We believe Amanda specifically targeted clients who might know you, perhaps assuming they would be less likely to question activities in their accounts. The realization hit like a physical blow. Amanda had not only allegedly committed fraud, she had exploited my reputation, my relationships. I thought of my fellow teachers, people I had worked alongside for decades now, possibly destitute because of my daughter's actions. I need to go, I said abruptly, standing on unsteady legs. Mr. Thompson, Detective Morgan called as I moved toward the door. We'll need to speak with you again, not as a suspect, she added quickly, but to establish what you might know about your daughter's activities. I nodded numbly and pushed through the station doors into the cool night air. In my car, I sat with the engine off, unable to summon the strength to drive. For the first time since Catherine's funeral, I put my head against the steering wheel and wept. The next morning arrived after a sleepless night. I met Jack at his downtown office at 8, my eyes burning from lack of sleep, my body moving through fog. His corner office with its leather chairs and Boston Harbor view had always impressed me before. Today, it felt like another planet disconnected from the reality I now inhabited. You went to the station last night, Jack said. It wasn't a question. I had to see her, I replied, accepting the coffee his assistant brought. I couldn't just sit at home. Jack nodded understanding rather than judgmental. Martin Goldstein will meet us at the courthouse for the arraignment at 2. In the meantime, there are things you need to see. He slid a thick folder across his desk. The prosecution sent these over this morning. Normally they wouldn't share evidence this early, but given the high-profile nature of the case and the overwhelming proof they have, they're showing their hand. I opened the folder with trembling fingers. Inside were dozens of documents. Bank statements, transfer authorizations, client account records. Most meant little to me until Jack began explaining. This is the paper trail, he said, pointing to a series of transactions. Amanda would transfer small amounts initially, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, from various client accounts to a holding account. From there, the money moved through several offshore entities before landing in accounts in the Cayman Islands under shell companies controlled by Amanda and Thomas. Then he showed me documents bearing Amanda's signature authorizing transfers that clients had never requested. There were forged signatures on withdrawal forms, doctored statements sent to clients showing falsely inflated balances, and internal emails where account discrepancies had been explained away by Amanda as system errors that she would personally handle. The scheme grew more sophisticated over time, Jack continued. They began targeting older clients, some with early dementia, who were less likely to monitor their accounts closely. When questions arose, Amanda would assure them everything was fine, often leveraging personal connections, including your name. My stomach churned as he showed me emails between Amanda and clients that mentioned me by name. As Mr. Thompson's daughter, I understand the importance of trust. She had written to a former colleague of mine. I'll take care of your retirement funds, as if they were my father's. As devastating as the financial documents were, what broke me completely were the communications between Amanda and Thomas. The prosecution had obtained text messages and emails revealing not just their complicity, but their callous attitude toward their victims. "Old people don't even need that much money," Thomas had written in one message. "They'll be dead before they can spend it all anyway." Amanda's reply had been equally chilling. Mrs. Barton called again about her statement. I mentioned Dad's name, and she immediately apologized for bothering me. These people are so easy to handle. I pushed the papers away, unable to read more. "I don't understand. This isn't the daughter I raised." Jack sighed heavily. "There's more, Ron. The investigators found evidence that Amanda and Thomas were planning to leave the country. They had one-way tickets to Bali booked for tomorrow, transfers to multiple international banks, and new identities being prepared. They were going to run," I whispered, the final piece of denial crumbling within me. "With the money, yes. If they hadn't been caught now, they would have disappeared completely by the weekend." I stared out at the harbor, watching a ferry making its way toward one of the islands. My mind struggled to reconcile the Amanda in these documents with the daughter I thought I knew. Had I been blind all along, or had something fundamental changed in her that I failed to notice? "What happens now?" I asked, my voice hollow. "The prosecution is seeking no bail, given the flight risk and the amount stolen. Realistically, they're offering a plea deal of 15 years, with possibility of parole after 10, or they'll go to trial seeking 25 to 30. 15 years. The words felt like stones in my mouth. Amanda would be nearly 50 when released her youth, and prime years spent behind bars. It's actually lenient, given the magnitude and premeditation," Jack said gently. "White-collar sentences have gotten much harsher since 2008. I nodded, remembering the financial crisis and public outrage over Wall Street criminals receiving slaps on the wrist. And Thomas, same deal offered. They're being treated as equal partners in the scheme. As I sat there, trying to process everything, Jack's phone rang. After a brief conversation, he hung up with a grim expression. "That was Martin. The arraignment has been moved up. We need to head to the courthouse now." Outside Jack's building, a small group of reporters had gathered. Someone had tipped them off about the case. A prestigious financial advisor and her fiancé allegedly stealing millions from vulnerable clients made for compelling news. Flashbulbs popped as Jack hustled me into his car. I caught a fragment of a reporter's question. "Mr. Thompson, did you know your daughter was stealing from your friends?" The courthouse steps held more reporters. By tomorrow, I realized my face would be on local news, my name forever linked to Amanda's crimes. The father of the woman who stole from the elderly. The retired teacher whose daughter betrayed his colleague's trust. Inside the courtroom, I sat in the front row watching as Amanda was led in, wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hands and feet shackled. She looked smaller, somehow diminished by her surroundings, and the gravity of the charges against her. When the judge denied bail, citing the overwhelming evidence of guilt and significant flight risk. Amanda didn't react. She seemed resigned already, accepting what I was still struggling to comprehend. As they led her away, our eyes met briefly. I searched again for some sign of the daughter I knew, some flash of the moral person I believed I had raised. Instead, I saw a stranger looking back at me, calculating, cornered, but not remorseful. In that moment, standing in a courtroom surrounded by the wreckage of so many lives, including my own, I realized that the truth about Amanda might be more painful than any lie I could tell myself. The media descended on my quiet suburban life like vultures on carrion. By the evening news cycle, Amanda's arrest was the lead story on every local channel. By the next morning, national outlets had picked up the narrative, framing it as another cautionary tale of financial industry corruption. Daughter of respected teacher charged in massive elder fraud scheme, blared one headline. Another read, financial advisor targeted vulnerable seniors, including father's colleagues. I returned home from the arraignment to find 3 news vans parked on my street and reporters waiting on my front lawn. Neighbors peered from windows and porches, some with sympathy, others with undisguised curiosity. I pushed past the microphones and cameras, ignoring questions shouted at me. Mr. Thompson, were you involved in your daughter's scheme? Did you benefit from the stolen money? How does it feel to know your daughter stole from your friends? Inside. I drew all the curtains and unplugged my landline after the 20th call. My cell phone buzzed constantly until I turned it off too. The isolation was both a prison and a refuge. By the second day, my voicemail box was full of messages, some from supportive friends, many from former colleagues and students expressing shock or seeking explanations, and a few from angry victims demanding to know how I could have raised a monster who preyed on the elderly. One message cut deeper than all the others. Martha Reynolds, who had taught English in the classroom next to mine for 20 years, her voice breaking as she spoke. Ron, it's Martha. I need to understand. Amanda managed my entire retirement fund. The police say most of it is gone. $67,000. It took me 30 years to save that. I trusted her because of you. Please call me back. Martha was 73, widowed 5 years earlier with no children to support her. She had retired the same year as me, looking forward to finally traveling and enjoying the modest but comfortable life her savings would provide. Now that future had vanished, stolen by my own daughter. I sat in my darkened living room, Martha's message playing in my mind on repeat. The faces of potential victims began to materialize. Colleagues who had attended my retirement party, neighbors who had watched Amanda grow up, friends who had supported us after Catherine's death. Had Amanda targeted them all, using my reputation as a shield, while she drained their accounts? On the 3rd morning, my sister Barbara arrived unannounced from Arizona, using her spare key to enter, when I didn't answer the door. You look terrible, she said bluntly, setting down her suitcase and opening the curtains to let in light I had been avoiding. When did you last eat? I couldn't remember. The refrigerator held food I had bought for a life that no longer existed, the life before I knew the truth about Amanda. Barbara, 5 years my senior, and perpetually practical, took charge immediately. She shooed away reporters with surprising effectiveness, prepared a simple meal I barely tasted, and sat me down for a conversation I had been avoiding even with myself. It's not your fault, she said firmly, ignoring my attempt to look away. Amanda made her own choices. You were a good father, always there for her, especially after Catherine died. Whatever twisted her moral compass, it wasn't your parenting. I must have missed something, I insisted. Some sign, some warning that she was capable of this. Barbara shook her head. People compartmentalize, Ron. They show you what they want you to see. The Amanda you knew was real, but so is this other side of her you never saw. both exist in the same person. Her words offered little comfort, but did provide a framework for beginning to process the incomprehensible. Amanda wasn't suddenly a different person. She had chosen to become someone capable of betraying everything I thought she valued. After a week of hiding, I forced myself to venture out. The media interest had faded somewhat, though I still occasionally spotted a reporter watching my house. My first stop was Malone's Diner, where I had eaten breakfast every Saturday for 20 years. The usual friendly greeting from Diane, the owner, was replaced by an awkward smile. Conversations dimmed as I entered, then resumed in hushed tones. I took my usual booth by the window, and Diane brought coffee without being asked. "On the house today, Ron," she said kindly. "You don't have to do that, Diane." "I know, but you didn't do anything wrong, and folks around here need to remember that." She said it loudly enough for the other patrons to hear, a small act of public support that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Emboldened by Diane's kindness, I made the hardest call of all that afternoon, to Martha Reynolds. We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop halfway between our home's neutral territory for a conversation neither of us wanted to have. Martha looked older than when I'd last seen her at the retirement party 2 years earlier. The strain of recent events had etched new lines around her eyes and mouth. We sat across from each other, 2 cups of cooling coffee between us like a barrier. "I trusted her completely," Martha said without preamble. "When the detective showed me the documents, I couldn't believe it. Amanda helped me set up automatic bill payments, so I wouldn't have to worry about forgetting. All along, she was using that access to drain my account gradually." "Martha, I had no idea," I said, the inadequacy of the words burning my throat. "If there was any way I could make this right, can you return $67,000? She asked sharply, then immediately softened. "I'm sorry, Ron. I know it's not your fault. But that money was everything to me. My medication isn't fully covered by insurance. My roof needs replacing. I was going to visit my sister in California next month. She has cancer, and we don't know how much time she has left." Each word was a knife twisting in my gut. Martha's losses were concrete, immediate, and life-altering. And she was just one of potentially dozens of victims. "I've put my house on the market," I said. "It won't cover everyone's losses, but it might help some of the most vulnerable victims." Martha's eyes widened. "Ron, no. That's your home. Where will you live?" "Barbara has a mother-in-law suite I can use until I figure things out. The house is paid off, so whatever it sells for can go directly to people like you." She reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. The first human contact I'd welcomed in days. "That won't solve anything. It's not your debt to pay." "It feels like it is," I admitted. "Every time I walk past Amanda's childhood bedroom or see her graduation photo on the wall, I feel complicit somehow." Martha's anger had visibly softened, replaced by a shared grief for different but connected losses. "We've both been betrayed by someone we loved," she said quietly. "Maybe that's something we can help each other through." As we parted, Martha hugged me awkwardly. Both of us damaged by my daughter's actions, but finding an unexpected connection in our shared pain. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. That would take much longer. But it was a first step towards something like understanding. The following weeks brought more painful revelations. The total amount stolen climbed to nearly $5 million as more victims came forward. Thomas's parents publicly disowned him, claiming they had been deceived as well, though rumors circulated that they had benefited from gifts purchased with stolen funds. Some days, checking my mail became an exercise in emotional endurance. Alongside bills and flyers were occasional hate letters, blaming me for failing to raise Amanda properly. One particularly vicious anonymous note suggested I should kill myself out of shame for what my daughter had done. Yet there were also unexpected kindnesses. My former students organized a support campaign, sending cards reminding me of the positive impact I had made on their lives. Several colleagues wrote letters to the editor, defending my character and rejecting any suggestion that I bore responsibility for Amanda's crimes. Gradually, I began emerging from isolation. Barbara returned to Arizona after 2 weeks, but called daily to check on me. I resumed volunteer work at the local library, finding solace in the quiet routine of reshelving books and helping patrons. Some people avoided me, but most treated me with a gentle normalcy that helped restore my sense of belonging in a community that had been mine for decades. Through it all, one question haunted me. Why? What had driven Amanda, raised with love and moral guidance, to betray everything I thought she valued? After 3 weeks of avoiding her, I finally requested a jail visit, determined to face the daughter I no longer recognized. The visitor's room at the Suffolk County Jail was smaller than I had imagined, with beige walls and fluorescent lighting that cast everyone in an unflattering pallor. I sat at a metal table bolted to the floor, hands clasped tightly to stop their trembling. When the door opened and Amanda entered, escorted by a female corrections officer, I barely recognized her. Gone was the polished financial advisor, with perfectly styled hair and designer clothing. This Amanda wore a baggy orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, face devoid of makeup. Without her usual armor of sophistication, she looked younger, more vulnerable, and somehow more like the daughter I remembered. We sat in awkward silence after the officer stepped back to her position by the door. 3 weeks of questions crowded my mind. Yet now that Amanda sat across from me, I couldn't form the words to begin. "You look terrible, Dad," she finally said, at her voice softer than I expected. "So do you," I replied, surprising myself with a small, sad laugh that she mirrored briefly. "I guess orange isn't my color after all." She attempted humor that fell flat in the sterile room. The moment of familiarity passed, leaving us stranded again in the new reality of our relationship. I studied her face, searching for signs of the moral person I thought I had raised, wondering if that person had ever truly existed. "Why Amanda?" I finally asked the question that had consumed my days and nights. "Why would you do this?" She looked down at her hands, the engagement ring now conspicuously absent from her finger. "It's complicated." "Try me," I said, my voice harder than intended. "I've spent 3 weeks trying to understand how my daughter could steal from elderly people who trusted her, people who were my friends, my colleagues. It didn't start out as some grand scheme," she began defensively. "The first time was actually an accident. I made a transfer error, and money ended up in the wrong account. No one noticed. I was going to fix it, but then Thomas and I were looking at apartments, and everything in Boston was so expensive. So you just kept the money," I finished for her. She nodded, a flash of shame crossing her face. "After that, it seemed so easy. These people had so much money they didn't even notice when small amounts disappeared. Most of them never checked their statements carefully." "Martha Reynolds noticed," I countered. "She can't afford her medications now. She can't visit her dying sister." Amanda flinched. "I never meant to hurt anyone like Martha. It was supposed to be just the wealthy clients." "Is that how you justified it? That rich people deserve to be stolen from?" "You don't understand the pressure, Dad," she said, an edge of frustration entering her voice. "After Mom died, I promised myself I'd never live with financial insecurity. Then I got into Blackwell and saw how the truly wealthy live. Thomas came from that world. Private schools, summer homes, family connections. I wanted to belong there." "By stealing?" I asked incredulously. "By having what everyone else in that world had," she snapped. "Do you know what it's like to manage millions for people who've never worked a day in their lives, to watch clients spend more on a weekend vacation than you make in a year? To have colleagues who summer in the Hamptons while you can barely afford rent in a decent neighborhood. I shook my head, unable to reconcile this entitled person with the daughter who once donated her allowance to charity. That doesn't make theft acceptable, Amanda. Nothing does. I know that, she said, deflating slightly. At least I know it now. But it was so gradual. Each time got easier. Thomas kept pushing for more. We had the wedding to plan, the lifestyle to maintain. Once we started, we couldn't stop. You targeted people who knew me. I said, the betrayal still raw. You used my name, my reputation to gain their trust. For the first time, real shame flashed across her face. That was Thomas's idea initially. He said people would be less suspicious if they had a personal connection. After a while, it just became another strategy. Another strategy. I repeated the words, tasting bitter. These were people who watched you grow up, Amanda. People who came to your graduation party, who sent cards when your mother died. She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. After a moment of silence, she straightened her shoulders and changed tactics. Dad, I need your help. My lawyer says they're offering 15 years. 15 years of my life gone. I can't accept that. We need a better defense. I need you to mortgage your house for my legal defense. Martin Goldstein is good, but he's not the best. With about $300,000, we could get Elliot Davidson from New York. He specializes in financial crimes and has an amazing track record for reduced sentences. I stared at her, momentarily speechless, after everything that had happened, after all the lives she had ruined. Including mine, she was asking me to sacrifice my only financial security for her defense. The house is already on the market, I said quietly. Her eyes lit up. Perfect, so you can use the proceeds for restitution to your victims, I interrupted. Every penny will go toward helping the people you stole from. The calculation in her eyes was immediate and chilling. Dad, be realistic. That money won't make a dent in what they're claiming I took, but it could make a huge difference in my defense. I'm your daughter, your only child. Family comes first, right? That's what you always taught me. I taught you that honesty comes first, I corrected. That integrity matters more than money. That we have a responsibility to care for others, especially the vulnerable. I leaned forward, holding her gaze. What happened to that girl, Amanda? The one who insisted on returning extra change to cashiers? The one who volunteered at homeless shelters? She grew up, Amanda replied coldly. She realized the world doesn't reward good little girls who follow all the rules. It rewards people who take what they want. In that moment, I saw Amanda clearly for perhaps the first time in years. Not as the idealized daughter I'd cherished, nor as the monster depicted in news reports, but as someone who had made a series of choices that revealed and then reinforced her worst qualities. I won't be mortgaging the house for your defense, I said firmly. I'll continue to visit you because you are my daughter and I love you. But I won't enable this behavior anymore. Enable, she repeated incredulously. Is that what you think you've been doing? Yes. I admitted, the realization crystallizing as I spoke. Every time I ignored your materialistic tendencies, every time I accepted your explanations without question, every time I chose to see only what I wanted to see, I was enabling you to become the person sitting across from me now. Her face hardened, the vulnerability vanishing. You were never there for me when it really counted. After Mom died, you were too wrapped up in your own grief to see how much I was struggling. I had to be the strong one, the successful one to keep you going. My entire life has been about making you proud, and the one time I need you to step up for me, you're walking away. The accusation stung because it contained a grain of truth. I had relied on Amanda's strength after Catherine's death, perhaps too much, but her attempt to rewrite our entire relationship as one where she was the victim rang hollow. I'm sorry if I leaned on you too heavily after your mother died, I said. That was wrong of me. But nothing in your childhood justifies what you've done as an adult. These were your choices, Amanda. Not mine. Not your mother's. Not even Thomas's. Yours. Get out, she spat, rising from her chair. If you won't help me, then don't bother coming back. Amanda, I began, but she was already signaling to the guard. I'm done here, she announced. I want to return to my cell. As the officer approached to escort her out, Amanda turned back to me, her expression cold and distant. You know what, Dad? You're a disappointment. You always have been. A small-time teacher with small-time dreams who never amounted to anything. At least I had ambition. The words were calculated to wound, and they did. But beneath the pain, I felt something unexpected. Relief. The fog of confusion and denial that had surrounded me since Jack's phone call was finally lifting. I could see Amanda clearly now, both the good and the terrible, without the distorting lens of parental idealization. I'll be here next week at the same time, I said quietly as she turned to leave. Whether you want to see me or not is up to you. She didn't respond, her back rigid as the guard led her away. When the door closed behind her, the guard who had been observing our interaction approached with an unexpected kindness in her eyes. You'd be surprised how many families we see go through this, she said, helping me gather my visitor's badge and paperwork. It's always hardest on the parents. They blame themselves, wondering where they went wrong. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. For what it's worth, she continued, walking me toward the exit. In my 15 years here, I've learned that some people just make bad choices no matter how they were raised. All you can do is love them, without enabling them. Sounds like you're on the right track. Her words followed me out of the jail and into the bright afternoon sunlight. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the faintest stirring of what might eventually become peace, not with what Amanda had done, but with my own path forward through the wreckage of her choices. 6 months passed, transforming my life in ways I could never have imagined. My modest 3-bedroom house sold quickly, the proceeds establishing a small restitution fund for Amanda's victims. I moved into an apartment near the community college, where I had begun teaching night classes in basic financial literacy for seniors, my small attempt to prevent future victims like Martha. The media attention eventually faded as newer scandals captured public interest. Amanda and Thomas both accepted plea deals, 15 years with possibility of parole after 10+ restitution orders that would follow them long after their release. Thomas's wealthy family disowned him completely, his parents even changing their phone numbers and moving to avoid the shame by association. Those first months were a crash course in rebuilding a life from scattered pieces. Some friends disappeared uncomfortable with the notoriety or unable to separate me from Amanda's crimes. Others showed remarkable loyalty, particularly former students, who remembered the positive influence I had once been in their lives. I joined a support group for families of white-collar criminals, discovering I wasn't alone in my experience of shock betrayal and public humiliation. There were parents of embezzlers, spouses of Ponzi scheme, operators, siblings of identity thieves, all struggling with the same questions that haunted me. How well do we really know those closest to us? How do we love someone whose actions we abhor? Through these connections, I began volunteering with a victim advocacy organization, speaking at senior centers about financial fraud protection. My painfully acquired expertise gave me credibility, and sharing Amanda's methods helped others recognize warning signs. Each presentation was an exercise in vulnerability, requiring me to publicly acknowledge my daughter's crimes while trying to create something positive from our shared disgrace. Martha Reynolds became an unexpected ally in this work. After our initial difficult coffee shop conversation, we gradually rebuilt a friendship strengthened by our shared experience of betrayal. She sometimes joined me at presentations, offering the victim's perspective that complemented my insider knowledge of the perpetrator's tactics. "I was angry at you for a long time," she admitted during one drive home from a senior center in Worcester. "Not logically, I knew you weren't responsible, but emotionally, I needed someone to blame who wasn't behind bars." "I understand," I said. And I did. Sometimes I still blamed myself, searching for the moment I might have intervened, the warning sign I should have recognized. "The anger burned itself out eventually," she continued, "and I realized we were both victims of Amanda's choices, just in different ways. You lost even more than I did." Her words captured a truth I had been reluctant to acknowledge. While Martha lost her savings, I lost my understanding of my own life. Every memory of Amanda's childhood was now questioned, every proud parenting moment examined for signs I had missed, every value I thought I had instilled revealed as potentially hollow. My relationship with Amanda evolved painfully over those 6 months. After our confrontation in jail, she refused to see me for nearly a month. I continued to show up for scheduled visits anyway, sitting alone in the visitor's room for my allotted time before returning home. Eventually, her resistance crumbled, perhaps from loneliness, or perhaps from realizing I wouldn't be manipulated by her rejection. Our conversations remained strained, but gradually became more honest. The Amanda who emerged in these visits was neither the sociopath depicted in media accounts, nor the innocent victim she initially portrayed herself as, but something more complex, a person capable of both genuine connection and profound selfishness. "I keep thinking about Mrs. Abernathy," she said during one visit, referring to an elderly victim who had lost over $200,000. "She used to bring homemade cookies to our meetings. She told me I reminded her of her granddaughter." "She testified at your sentencing," I reminded her. "She had to sell her home and move in with her son in Michigan." Amanda nodded, looking down at her hands. "I know. I think about her a lot now. I never let myself think about the real people back then. They were just names on accounts, numbers on a spreadsheet." These moments of apparent reflection gave me cautious hope, though I remained wary of Amanda's talent for telling people what they wanted to hear. True redemption, I had learned, wasn't found in words, but in consistent actions over time. One Tuesday morning in early November, exactly 6 months after Amanda's arrest, I received an unexpected visitor at my apartment. Detective Sarah Morgan stood at my door, looking different in casual clothes rather than her usual professional attire. "I was in the neighborhood for a case and thought I'd stop by," she explained as I invited her in. "I wanted to see how you were doing." I offered coffee, which she accepted, and we sat at my small kitchen table. Through the window, we could see trees shedding their autumn leaves, a visual reminder of change and impermanence. "The department has been following your work with the senior centers," she said. "It's making a difference. Reports of similar fraud schemes are down 15% in areas where you've presented." The news was unexpectedly gratifying. "It helps to have a purpose," I admitted. "Something constructive to do with all this knowledge I never wanted to have." She nodded, understanding. "That's actually why I stopped by. We're putting together a more formal fraud prevention program, and we could use someone with your perspective. It would be a paid consultant position working with our financial crimes unit to educate potential victims." The offer caught me off guard. "You want to hire the father of one of your most notorious perpetrators? Precisely because you're her father," Detective Morgan confirmed. "You have insights none of our professional educators have. You understand both sides of the equation in a way no one else can." As we discussed the details, I felt something shift inside me, a sense of coming full circle. The greatest trauma of my life was gradually transforming into a source of purpose and even expertise. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had become productive, channeled toward preventing others from experiencing similar betrayals. After Detective Morgan left, I found myself looking at a photograph of Amanda I kept on my bedside table. Not a recent one, but a picture from her college graduation. She was beaming beside me, full of promise, and seeming innocence, unaware of the choices that would eventually lead her to a prison cell. I no longer viewed that younger Amanda with naive idealization, nor with the bitter disillusionment that had initially followed her arrest. Instead, I saw her with clear-eyed compassion, a flawed human being who had made terrible choices, but remained inextricably part of my life and heart. That evening, I met with a young man named Jason, whose mother had been convicted of insurance fraud 3 years earlier. He had reached out through the support group, struggling with many of the same questions that had once consumed me. Over dinner at a quiet restaurant, I shared what wisdom my painful journey had provided. The hardest lesson, I told him, was learning that loving someone doesn't mean excusing or enabling their harmful actions. Real love sometimes requires allowing those we care about to face the consequences of their choices. "Do you still love your daughter?" He asked the question that lay at the heart of everything. "Yes," I answered without hesitation, "but I love her truthfully now. I see her as she is, not as I wished her to be. That's the most honest love I can offer." As we finished our meal, I realized how far I had come from that devastating Thursday evening, when my phone had buzzed with Jack's text message. The path forward remained challenging. Years of prison visits ahead, complex emotions to navigate, trust to rebuild. With Amanda, if she proved genuinely remorseful. Yet I no longer felt lost in the darkness of betrayal and shame. The lawyer's call had revealed a terrible truth about my daughter, but it had also revealed something important about myself, a capacity for resilience I hadn't known I possessed. In the ruins of what I thought was my life, I had found the foundation for something new, something authentic, and ultimately, something healing. What hard truth have you had to face about someone you love? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments below. And if you found value in hearing mine, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that surviving betrayal is possible. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes our greatest growth comes through our most painful challenges.